Hey, everybody, welcome back to another episode of Where Medicine Meets Ministry. Dr. Cherie talks faith and facts. I have with me today Mr. Michael Arterberry. Man, oh my gosh, wait till you guys hear about this man. You know, as a believer and having a very strong faith in God, Michael believes that nothing happens by accident. We all have a purpose and each come in and out of others' lives to serve a purpose, even if it's only for a limited, brief time. His gift and purpose is to inspire and motivate others to be empowered and motivated to seek the purpose in their own lives. And so without further ado, please help me welcome Mr. Michael Arterberry. Hi, Michael. How are you doing?
Yes, how are you, Dr. Sheree?
I'm doing very well. I really appreciate you agreeing to be on the show. On today, I believe your history and what you are doing now with what you have founded in your own organization, your nonprofit organization, is profound. And I think it will benefit our listeners. And so I want to jump right on into it. You know, in our discussions, you mentioned you had role models who helped you to overcome adversities. Can you share an example of one and what direct impact did he or she have on your life then and now?
Well, I wouldn't do it justice if I just kind of gave you a role model. What I would like to illustrate for you is the fact that I came from a dysfunctional family. So what I did to protect myself growing up is I created a traditional family. So what I mean by that is what I did is I used my coaches. God blessed me to be an elite athlete.
Okay.
So my mom, rather than taking me to therapy, she got me into sports. So I played basketball, baseball, football, and soccer from the age of 8 until I graduated high school. And I actually could have gone to play all 4 sports in college, but I chose football. Okay, so when you talk about role models, what I did within that world is my coaches became my father figure. And so those were the ones that I leaned on for that type of guidance. My teammates became my brothers and sisters, and the positive accolades that I got from being good in the sports became what you would get if you came through the door and you had a traditional family setting. So when you ask for a role model, what I did is in the midst of my dysfunction and the craziness in my house is I created that world and I was able to live within that bubble so that the dysfunction never really wore off on me to a point where it kept me from striving. So when you say role model, I had many, but in the midst of all the craziness in my life, I was able to really conduct myself as a healthy young child growing up.
Okay, so see, that's why I set it up like this, because I wanted individuals to see and hear the positive impact on the other side. Okay, before we went into some of the dysfunctionality. Now,
Right.
just share with us just some of what was dysfunctional, because I know that
Okay.
there are a number of families like this, like ours, if you will, that
Right.
were suffering through some of the same things. So just share with the audience, what were some of the things that were inflicting your family household that even forced your mom to say, you know what, I need to divert this attention. Let's get him in the sports. I need him off the streets. Share with us what was going on.
Listen, I grew up in a home with a raging alcoholic father. And when I say raging, Dr. Sheree, he raged from the time I was born until the day he died when I was 16. And so just to let your listeners and you understand how that is, imagine any time that I got caught up in happiness during a day, something would tap me on the shoulder and say, hey, buddy, don't you get too caught up because tonight, when you go home, it was like rolling the dice. You didn't know what was going to happen. So A raging alcoholic father is one of the parts of the dysfunction. On top of that, I grew up in poverty, but the craziness of that statement is that both of my parents worked full time. My dad was a bus driver, my mom was a housekeeper, but my dad's money went to drinking. And my mother raised 4 kids with a housekeeping salary. So I grew up in poverty, and then, like we're saying, and with Dusty, is the dysfunction. I mean, you got to imagine this raging alcoholic dad comes home, he rages, keeps us up to 2, 3 o'clock in the morning. My mom the following morning would get me dressed, and we wouldn't debrief it. Imagine that. We didn't talk about it. My clothes would be put on, and I would be sent off to school, and you would have to take this stuff to a place and deal with it. So, when you talk about faith in God, listen, now that I'm older and I'm mature in my faith, you know what I mean? You and I had a conversation beforehand, and I talked about how the enemy came to get me young.
Mm-hmm.
That craziness in my house was because, as the word says, the enemy peeked into my future.
Mm-hmm.
And he saw the impact that I was going to have. So he came to divert me. And what the beauty is that I had a praying mom. She was a praying mom. She was a praying mom. So she kept, the hedge was over me, and I was protected through that craziness. But yeah, he came to get me because now, like we're going to talk about, I have a positive impact on many, not only youth, young people, but adults as well.
Yes. And see, what you described is a lot of households, regardless of our ethnicity, our nationality, we live with that. And culturally, we deal with children are to be seen and not heard, or this is grown folks' business. And then likewise, we're also dealing with the fact that now that we are adults and our parents, we can appreciate that no one is perfect.
Yes.
And so what our parents may have thought was the best thing for us, just to keep on plowing through. We want you to see adversities. I know that everything here in the home, meaning your mom, this ain't right. You seeing it ain't right. You as a man have to now process. My dad, my role model, what's supposed to be a role model, is working, but yet is not financially contributing to the home. So one, that sets up a standard for you and what you're going to do in your own home, but you didn't have the ability to fully process that as you were going through it. And so you and I are examples of how there can be so much dysfunction in the home that is never talked about. You live through it. Even as adults, it's kind of poo-pooed away. If you try to bring it up, it's kind of like, hush, baby, that's in the past. It's in the past. God has blessed us. Let's move on. But sometimes understanding your past helps you to understand where you are in your present and where God intends for you to go in your future.
Yes.
We were blessed that we had grace and mercy upon us.
Yes,
because in the midst of not necessarily getting the answers and the words that we needed to hear from the adults in our life at that time, we had the grace and mercy and that hedge of protection that God kept us while we were going through, so that that knowledge and wisdom that we gain later on down the line or on the other side of some of these trials and tribulations, if you will, we can now make sense of them without harboring and holding any bitterness or hatred or sadness or wallowing in our own pity party of what our childhood was like compared to other people.
Yes.
Now, in 2008, you founded the Youth Voices Center. It's a nonprofit organization. Can you share why and what its mission is?
Yes. What happened is I took that childhood, went off to college, and I majored in social work. And as I started to get jobs and I started to work with youth groups, my job, the executive directors and such would go out on the internet and pick curriculums just by looking at them on the internet, bring them to me, and then tell me to, do them. And I say that to you because when the curriculums weren't successful, there were times where I would be punished, or reprimanded, even though I had no input on picking the material, but I was supposed to be able to facilitate it. So what I did, and I decided is, you know what? Rather than allowing them to bring me a curriculum, I created my own. So I created a program which I call Power of Peace. And I started to take my program. Matter of fact, I created it working for a nonprofit. I went to the nonprofit and I said, I have this. Will you allow me to do the program under your umbrella, and you just pay me, and we'll both reap the benefits of it. And you know what happened is it grew, and there was more success. And then my boss, not knowing she was doing this, showed me the streams of money that were coming in. And so now she showed me how much money was coming into the program. And then I thought about my salary. So I'm like, hold it, wait a second. I'm getting paid this. This is the amount of money that's coming in. So I got to tell you this. So what happens is now she takes me to a lunch to schmooze a philanthropist to get more money. So imagine we're sitting at the table and you have the grant writer, my executive director, the philanthropist, and her lawyer. And we're sitting at the table and we're talking, and they're talking to set it up, and then she kicks it to me. So when she kicks it to me, I have cheat notes written on a paper underneath on my lap, the accolades of my program. And so when they kick it to me, I crumble up the paper. They don't know this, underneath the table. And you know what? I stepped out on faith and I told this philanthropist that her money was safe with me because the person that I'm accountable to is God. Now, when I say, yeah, look at you. When I said that, imagine, I said that at a business lunch. So the whole table goes silent. The whole table goes silent. My grant writer's face turns red. My boss, the executive director, she's looking at me like, what did you just do? The philanthropist's lawyer, he's cracking up. And once everything's settled, the lawyer says, Michael, I just want you to know, her name was Pat. That Pat is a devoted Christian. And girl, yes.
Look at that.
And when she said that, the whole meeting shifted. And by the end of the meeting, the woman says to my executive director, not only would she give the amount that she gives, she raised it $100,000, but she said, only if I continue to be there. Now, if you let me walk this out a little bit, because I'm going to tell you how I got the nonprofit. After that luncheon, this Christian woman said she wants to fellowship with me regularly. So we started to meet for breakfast. And every time we come to breakfast, she would bring me famous people. Like real, yeah, famous. Like one time she brought a famous Christian producer for a record label, and she would bring them to my breakfast and just introduce me. So finally I said to myself, I'm going to ask her for the money. So she was giving it to the nonprofit. I said, you know what? I'm going to ask her to give me the money. So I call her up and I said, listen, Pat, would you give me the money if I decided to go out on my own? Now, she didn't know the program was mine. She thought I just did it well for the nonprofit. So you know what she said to me? She said, I'll give you half. She says, you leave so that I don't, befriend the nonprofit. Let them keep half. I'll give you half. Go out and do your thing. And when she said that, I was afraid. And so I said, no, I don't want to do that. Don't tell my boss. Let's just continue the way things are. But she did her research by the time we met for the next breakfast. Before I can put my butt in the seat, you know what she said to me? What? She said, I'll give you all the money. She says, I will give you all the money. You can leave the nonprofit And on that day, the producer was there because at that time I was about to back out. Now I was overwhelmed because I went from being a worker to having all this money. That means I got to now create a nonprofit. She says, do whatever you want to, whatever money you lay out, I'll give you back the money to lay out for the nonprofit, and I'll give you all the money. And the guy that ran the record label, when he saw my face and saw that I was going to retreat, he says to me, he says, what would your kids say if they knew you had this opportunity and you decided not to do it? And I walked out of that breakfast, called my wife, and we got a lawyer, and within months, I had my nonprofit, and this woman would wire money to me twice a year. And for 8 years, I started my nonprofit.
Look at God.
Yes, right? Can you believe it?
Yeah, okay, so perfect example that he will do it. Another example, right time, right place, right people.
Yeah.
Another opportunity, another example of he will allow your footsteps to be ordered. And finally, understanding and appreciating those times when it's time for you to move.
Yeah.
I mean, because you at least, you planted the seed when you asked the question, what if I was just to take this on my own and do it on my own, right? And without further research, she said, okay, I'll split it half and half. That way, keep everybody smooth, keep the peace and what have you. But then the Lord left a little unsettling with her. So she had to go back and do a little research. Okay, well, why would he, he really seems to have everything together. Let me just check this out. And then came back and said, fully. So now you was able to walk away with the full peace that you took a step out on faith.
Yes.
Sometimes we got to step out and find out. Because one thing I found, you can either be pitiful or powerful, but not both. You got to step out, right?
Yes.
And so you learned how to step out, but you also learned it was a valuable lesson with that peace.
Yeah.
And then because at first there was a little bit of fear, but there was a little unsettling. You weren't fully at peace with that 50-50. And when you weren't fully at peace, now we see it was never meant for you to only get half. You were meant to get 100%. That's why you weren't at peace. Now, you may have felt it as, oh, okay, wait, whoa, well, maybe I overspoke. Hold on. That's okay. Keep everything the way it is. But God knew you weren't meant for half. Yeah. You were meant for the full 100. Full 100. So the nonprofit Youth Voices Center, you seem to have a passion for helping the youth. Where do you think that passion stems from?
Because when you talk about being dressed after a crazy night in that tumultuous home, I couldn't talk to anybody, Dr. Cherie. You know what I'm saying? Can you imagine carrying that weight?
Yes.
And when doors would open and you think you could do that, see, and coming from, I'm going to say African-American home, you trained so well, you knew better.
Correct.
So when somebody would open that door and I would want to step through and just lay it on them, I would have to stop. And you know what, my friends, my wife wrote a book about so there's 2 books, we'll talk about them later.
Okay.
One I wrote, but my wife wrote a book about my story called God Was Holding My Hand. And when it hit the shelves and my friends started to get it and I started to tell my life story, I had a buddy of mine, he's a lawyer down in Manhattan, and he called me crying on a vacation with his family. He said, you came to school every day with a smile on your face. A smile on your face. And so, I blew, they couldn't believe it. They couldn't believe it. But yes, my passion for the youth is the fact that I remember being that age. And I remember, the fact that fortunately I didn't get caught up. I got friends that are drug addicts. They've been in prison. They've all gone the wrong route. But again, it wasn't the mentors. It was God who kept me on those rails. But like we've talked about, everything we go through in life is for a reason. My testimony, so when I get into a group of teenagers, the first thing I do is I unveil and let them know that I have cracks myself. You know, I show them a picture. All my presentations, even when I talk from a podium, I do a slideshow with it, is I show the house that I grew up in. And I explain to these young people how it was going winters without heat, not knowing where your next meal was going to come from, being embarrassed about where I lived. And I walk them through that. But then you know what I do is I show them where I live at now. So imagine I'm in the room, you know, I got a raised ranch, big yard, couple cars. And so I show them where I started. Then I show them where I live now. And then I explain to them that my program is a compilation of the files of what happened in between these two pictures. You see what I'm saying? And so my passion is being able, not only for the youth now, remember, not only do I have a passion to bring the youth through that path, but it's with the adults as well. You know what I'm saying? That resilience with the adults is you know, I always say this, is that we go through life and we step on landmines, but the landmine doesn't blow you up, it causes damage. Now, see, people like ourselves have been able to take the damage and use it in the proper way. Other people start to make decisions in real time based on their damage. So with the youth, I get them young. So I explain to a teenager that, listen, you went through something at 7 and 8. You're sitting up in this room and in this school, and you're making decisions based on what happened to you at 8 years old. We have to correct that, because if you don't correct it, your end story will be part of your history rather than reigniting and making a new destiny.
Wow. See, that's powerful, because I love the way you put that, because you can step on a landmine and cause damage, but not full destruction. But if you don't change the path that you're on, or if you continue to make wrong choices, wrong decisions based off of that previous damage, you can walk towards a path towards full destruction.
Yeah.
So it's a matter of changing the path. I love that.
Yeah.
Now, you mentioned something. So we know that your dad was an alcoholic, right?
Yeah.
I believe you said your mom was Seventh-day Adventist, correct?
Yep.
And she used to take you to church all the time, but I believe there came a time when that stopped. What happened?
So now that I'm older, I understand the dynamics. What happened is my dad being alcoholic, you know, people drink because they're unhappy. My mom found happiness at the church. So see, when she come back from church, she whistling because she went and, you know, got her little God on, you know what I'm saying? So, you know, he's in the house trying to cause a ruckus, but he doesn't like that. So what he did is he couldn't stop her from going. So I remember one night they had a big blow up, and she would do whatever he said. So like I even remember, it was terrible, Dr. Shree. Like if I wanted new sneakers, I would ride my bike I'd make holes in the bottom, and all I had to do was show him. And I knew if I showed him the sneakers, because of the control he had in the house, I was going to get a new pair. Now, I feel guilty doing that now. Because, yeah, you know what I'm saying? But because I didn't really understand the magnitude of it. You know, they wouldn't argue, but I knew that when I showed him the sneakers, I was getting a new pair the next day, because God forbid he came home to that house and I didn't have new shoes on my feet after he saw that I needed them. That's the kind of control he had. But I'm setting it up by saying when he came in and said, don't take me to the church anymore, actually the connection to the sports is then. I got into the sports when she no longer took me to the church. See, Seventh-day Adventist is Saturday, so she now had to occupy my Saturdays. So she got me into the sports to act it, you know, to allow me to do that time. But that's what happened. He said, don't take him up to that church anymore, and she couldn't do it.
Oh, so wow. But the groundwork had already been forged.
Yes.
The groundwork had been forged. Yes. So God allowed that season of time with the foundation already settled within you, right?
Yes.
Still growing, still developing. You're seeing your mom. You're seeing. I'm sure there were times when you may have heard her pray, and she's still the one that's keeping that family together, out there doing that housework, bringing that money in, and taking care of everything. But now opens up the door for sports that gives you that non-traditional family, if you will. Now you got the father figure in the coaches, and you have the team members, brothers and sisters, and so now you're able to express yourself. You're able
Yes.
to kind of work off this dysfunctionality, if you will, in a different way, all the while train up a child in the way he should go, and when he's old he won't depart. So that formation had already been settled, and at the
Yes.
appointed time, when God was ready for that particular season to pick back up, and for you to now gain more knowledge of him and now to minister, you now were equipped with some skills that drew people in. That
Yes.
sports, that previous history of major baggage, this ability to grow up as a Black man in the United States of America, all of those types of dynamics and stories that come along with it, you've now been able to forge and develop your story together, all with the background and the premise of this faith that
Yes.
God had already built up in you through your
Yes.
mom.
Yes.
That is just tremendous. Now, when you and I spoke before, you mentioned something. Okay, so we all know the scripture, yea, though I walk through the valley of the shadow of death, I will not fear. I will not fear. You mentioned that there are times when there are valley moments, right? But you've learned not to be afraid in the valley
Right.
anymore. Now, can you describe a valley moment for me when you were
Listen.
scared? And then
Yeah.
maybe a
Yeah.
valley moment when you shook that fear off.
When we talked about it, so I took that into my closet. And you know what I thought about, and it's pretty, I think, deep, is my valley moment was my childhood.
Mm.
It was my childhood. Now I say that because as a child, this dysfunctional dad, one of the perks was the fact that I couldn't have a babysitter. So I had to go to school where he drove a bus. And he drove the bus for an affluent school, which was outside the hood. So I didn't go to school with my friends in the hood. I went to school with like money, people that lived in mansions and had education and beautiful homes. So I was always exposed to a different life, even though I came back to the hood, and that's where I slept. Now I say valley moments was my childhood because there's times where I pull up to the driveway of my home today and I stop. I gotta park my car and look up at my beautiful home. And I think about that childhood being in that valley.
Mm-hmm.
You know what? I'll even take it a step further. I used to take my dad's bus to the school. And I remember a road we used to drive down where I would leave the hood, leaving the busted houses. But the houses that I used to stare at over the seat once I got to my school, that's the house I live in
Living
now.
in
The seed was planted.
testimony.
Yes, the seed was planted. And so when you think about peaks and valleys, and so that was a valley. But when I sit in my living room and the light is shining through my skylight, and I'm looking up, and this is the living room of one of those little boys' homes that I used to roll up in and say, when I get older, I'll have it. It makes you, I mean, you can't be but humble.
Absolutely right. Absolutely right. You and I, um, we share a
Kindred
fondness.
spirits. Yeah,
Yes,
yeah, we
yes.
kindred spirits.
It's amazing. It's like here's the male version and the female version. And of all days for me to wear my hair all slicked back. Oh, so
Oh, boy.
listen, it there is a story out there, and it's a beautiful parable,
Yeah,
and we both have fondness for this parable, and I believe you've used it sometimes when you have done keynote presentations and have spoken to, whether it's school groups, minority groups, business group, church groups, commencement speeches. Share, could you share that parable slash story with us and tell us which one are you? Because there's two characters in this story. I want to know which one are you and how so.
Okay, all right. So it's about a farmer and a donkey.
Mhm.
And this donkey is one of the farmer's favorite farm animals because once he finishes working with him on the fields, he brings the donkey back home and he allows the donkey to play with his kids. And so envision him coming home down the driveway and the kids run out the house and they play with him. They wash him, they ride him. And once he finishes doing this with the donkey, he releases him out to the farm. But one morning, the farmer came out to get his donkey and he whistled and the donkey didn't show. So the farmer says, wow, I got to go look for him. So he's searching around the farm and he finally hears him making noises at the bottom of an empty water well. See, during the night while he was wandering, the donkey fell into the well and obviously he couldn't get out. So the farmer looks down and he says, how am I going to get him out? So he goes and gets 6 of his friends and they come over to the well and they decide that they're going to pull him out with some rope. So all 6 of them go get the rope and they start lassoing the donkey. They throw the rope, they miss. They throw the rope, they miss. They throw the rope, they miss. They finally throw it by his hind legs. He's smart enough to step into it. They shimmy it up his body and they start to pull. They pull, the donkey moves. They pull, the donkey moves. They pull, the donkey moves. Then halfway up the well, they realize that he's too heavy. So when they realize he's too heavy, they lower him back to the bottom of the well. And now this farmer has to make a grim decision. Now, see, he can't feed him food at the bottom of the well because that wouldn't make sense. Now, he can't starve him because I said he's like a pet. So he's like, no, I can't really starve him. And then one of his hot-headed friends was like, hey, just shoot him. He's like, no, that's too violent. So one of his more reasonable friends stepped up behind him and whispered in his ear and he said, listen, you don't want your kids to fall into the well. So what we're going to have to do is we're going to sacrifice your donkey. We're going to cover him with dirt, but your kids will be safe and they won't fall into the well. And so the farmer says, you know what, I can deal with that. So they all get shovels and they start shoveling dirt. And every time that dirt would hit the donkey, he would scream. And every time he would scream, it would cause the farmer some distress. So you got dirt, scream, dirt, scream, dirt, scream. Then all of a sudden, the scream stopped. Now, when the scream stopped, they gave the donkey a moment of silence. But then they went back to work. More dirt, more dirt, more dirt. The next thing you know, you see the donkeys right here. More dirt, murder. Next thing you know, you see half his body. The next thing you know, that donkey walked right out of that well. Now, you asked the question. I just want to finish off the parable. Every time that dirt came across the wall, it would fall on the donkey's back. He would shake it off, and he would step on it. And he took every scoop of dirt that was meant to kill him to save his life. Let me tell you something. I am the donkey. I am the donkey. And I tell that story before any time I step to a mic or I start a group. Because what the world needs to know is you have to perfect shake your dirt. Because just like the donkey, if you don't shake your dirt, it will suffocate and take you out. And so, yeah, that, and I've got a course off of that. I have different things I do, but that shake the dirt is powerful, and I live by it.
Absolutely right. You know what? It was funny because I actually shared that story. I was running for a position on a board for a physician association. And it was an impromptu, okay, well, oh, we got so many great candidates, okay, all the candidates just get up and have a couple of words and, say something. So, I'm thinking in the back of my head, I'm like, okay, I got a couple of minutes. Now I'm a professional speaker, so it's not difficult for me to come up with words to say, but I'm just trying to think, with this group, I can get up and share my accolades, but they already know that. I have 23 initials behind my name. They get that. So I don't need to get up and talk about, I graduated with this type of GPA and all of that. What could I get up and say that's going to just be different than what anyone else would say? That was the story that I chose. And I told them, I have learned throughout my breast cancer diagnosis, through growing up on the south side of Chicago, to wanting to be and becoming a very successful Black female physician in a white male dominated profession, I've learned to shake it off.
Yeah.
And at the end of the day, whether or not I'm selected for this position or not, sweetheart, I'm going to shake it off. But
good.
It doesn't mean that the work that was already God designed for me, I'm still going to do it.
Yes.
Your choice, if it's for me, it's for me. I'm doing all that I can. And after having done all to stand, I'm just standing. That's it. That's all I can do. But I've learned how to shake it off. That story was what got me in. Because everyone else got up with the typical, my name is David so-and-so, and then blah, blah, blah. I told that and did the little movements too. They thought to themselves, oh my, well, who do we have here? They quickly found out.
Yes, they did.
They quickly found out, because it's something to be said about an individual who truly learns how to shake off adversities,
right,
and use them for their betterment and for their deliverance. Right. So there is a difference between ignoring it, because ignoring it, if the donkey had ignored the dirt just would have continued to overtake him and suffocate him and eventually kill him. But he didn't ignore it. He used it. He shook it off. Let me clean this mess up off me. Now look down around me with everything that was shaken off. How can I use this for my betterment? Yeah. How can I use this to get ahead?
Yes.
And that's what your life story has been.
Yes.
Even when you were silenced, and a lot of times as children, we're not silenced because somebody told us to be quiet. We're silenced just because of the tension in the room. And if nobody else brings it up, I'm not going to bring it up, because now by the time things seem to be calm again, if I bring it up, then all I'm going to do is bring back all the negative stuff. And then I'll be the person to have brought up and all of this negative stuff in our family. And so you and I have both learned how to take where we have come from and now turn it and use it for the good, because all things work together for the good. And you've developed. So wait a minute. So if youth voice is centered, so that stopped in 2016, right?
What's that?
2016. The nonprofit went from 2008 to 2016.
No, it still goes on.
It's still going. Oh, okay,
yep.
cool.
Yep.
I thought you said for.
No.
Whatever I thought. Okay,
yes.
Yeah. Okay,
still going.
Good. There we go. That's still going.
Yes.
Tell me this. With that still going on, how do you additionally find time to still speak at, commencement ceremonies and, minority groups and churches, and, when do you sleep?
Well, believe it or not, I want to speak on more stages. I don't speak on enough. Having a nonprofit, I'm very protective of it. I do all the work. I have a team, but I do all the workshops myself. As part of my package for a school, I do assemblies to do the kickoff. So I get to exercise my public speaking in that way. But the men's groups and the other pieces, the commencement speeches, are either schools that I've been in or people that are connected to a person of a school that I've been in when I get invited. But, owning your own business gives you the control of work and time. So, but really my dream, well, I don't even want to call it, I want to speak, you have to be careful of what you aspire to. So, I say that because I'm a TD Jakes fan. You know what I mean?
Yes,
and,
me too.
Yeah, I'm a TD Jakes fan, and I don't want to say God wants me on a bigger stage, because I know once my opportunity comes, if he wants a bigger stage for me, if it's his will, I'll get there. So I'm not anxious where I'm at, but I would like to speak on bigger stages, but I take what I get and I do what I have to do. So I'm able to balance the both because I am in control of the nonprofit. So it's not like somebody saying, listen, you got to work Monday and Thursday. If I have something set up, I'm able to set up my time around my venues.
Perfect. I wanted our listeners to hear, if you're looking for a powerful and dynamic speaker, a keynoter that can bring together not only history and experience, but he is truly an individual who has demonstrated how to use trials as a catalyst for success rather than an obstacle for failure, using
Yes.
Michael Arterberry's words that he has coined. Michael, you have been an absolute fantastic guest. I
Thank you.
know that the individuals listening to this episode, there are going to be so many individuals that say, yes, that was me, that was me, that was me, that was me. And I really truly appreciate you coming on the show, sharing your experience, sharing your passion. But I need individuals to know, how can they get in touch with you?
Yes. For the public speaking, they have to come to michaelarterberry.com. And that serves more of a purpose for me to be able to go out and speak at different venues. For my youth work, because I'll come into your local youth group or high school, they go to youthvoicescenter.org. All right.
Perfect.
And there I have a nice video, a sizzle reel that gives you a highlight film of what I do. So it's a nice video that they can see. And I'm very interactive on my social media platforms. So Facebook, LinkedIn. My Instagram's a little bit more fun. I played sports. I bodybuild after, I was a bodybuilder after my college football career. So every so often, I got some weightlifting things on there, but also positive messages. I like to put things out on a daily basis to help people, to inspire them. And so those are the ways that they can get me. And we can put that in the show notes for them
Absolutely.
so they can get that.
MichaelArterberry.com, youthvoicescenter.org. We will definitely make sure that both, not only those websites are available, but we'll make sure all of your social media handles are available in the show notes. Michael, before we leave, is there any final parting words that you would like to share with our listeners?
Yes. On the third page of my book, and it's called Be Encouraged, I wrote, short-term thinkers plant gardens, long-term thinkers plant trees, eternity-minded thinkers plant themselves in the souls of others. And the reason why I want to leave with that is because what I want people to understand is this, that there's some people that may be looking for God, but you may be the closest thing that they ever see. So my prayer daily is, if you're looking for him, I hope you find him in me. And so when I write that, that's what I'm trying to say. I'm trying to speak to my people out there, Dr. Cherie.
Okay, we can get that book at michaelarterberry.com.
Yes, you can go, or you know what? They can actually go to shakethedirtexperience.com.
shakethedirtexperience.com.
Yeah.
Get a copy of
Yes.
Michael's book entitled
Be Encouraged.
Be Encouraged. With that, everyone, thank you again for tuning into another episode of Where Medicine Meets Ministry. Dr. Cherie talks faith and facts. Until next time.